You're listening to the Cross-Check NHL Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clarke.
Welcome to the Cross-Check NHL Show. As always, I am Andrew Berkshire. Apparently, I'm not always who I usually am. I'm Andrew Berkshire from the Steve Dangle Podcast Network, host of Game Over Montreal, and I write for the Montreal Gazette, and I'm here with my co-host, the lovely Mary Clarke from For the Win. This is a recording that is happening later than usual because when we were supposed to record it on Thursday, I went to sleep and forgot. So Mary was like, "Hey, I'm ready when you are," and I answered that message about 7 hours later.
Yep.
So sorry about that, Mary. The Olympic schedule has me a little bit discombobulated. I'm staying up all night and sleeping all day, but I'm up now. We're going to talk about some stuff. We have some major topics to get to because, frankly, between the Olympics and the NHL right now, it is absolute chaos in sports right now. And if we had to cover basketball and football on top of it, this podcast would be 6 hours long. So thankfully we don't. Lots of things happened in the NHL over the last couple of days between when we recorded the last podcast and now, which, like, it's just crazy. First of all, a couple big suspensions that went down. Brad Marchand and Marcus Foligno. I believe Brad Marchand got 6 games. I actually have had no time to figure out what
2.
Marcus Foligno did. Okay, so
I'm
he got
pretty
2.
sure he got 2.
Honestly, that's insanely low for kneeing somebody in the head on purpose. But, you know, the NHL is the NHL. And I feel like there was something else, too, that happened. Oh, yeah, Brad Marchand broke the record for the most suspensions for a single player in NHL history. So congrats, Brad Marchand, for that. What a dubious honor, considering he already gets away with almost everything anyway. So get the heck out of here, Brad. All right, so we all got some other bigger topics to talk about. Obviously, the Montreal Canadiens axed head coach Dominique Ducharme. Didn't even last a calendar year despite making a Stanley Cup final. Brought in Martin St. Louis. We're going to talk about that. There's, Olympics to talk about because Canada and USA are doing some stuff. Both the men and the women are playing really, really well, so we'll hit on that. And Dave Tippett met the same fate as Dominique Ducharme. He was axed in Edmonton. Both Ducharme and Tippett had received the kiss of death earlier this season when the general manager said they would not be changing coaches this season. Never, ever believe that. All right, so Mary, let's get into the Habs. Craziness.
I know. You saying all of that, it's been a wild week for us both. It really has. And, we're only halfway through the Olympics, which is wild to think about because we have gone through individually and together so much. So it's been a wild ride. Obviously, sports are exciting and sports are fun, but God, is it exhausting. I've had to cover a few more things. I've got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, which is also going to be, wild because the Super Bowl is the biggest thing in sports and probably always will be, or at least for American sports. So it is just a wild time, but there's a lot to talk about. And usually on our Thursday/Now Friday shows, there isn't always a lot to talk about. So I'm glad we've actually have stuff to, dive into and discuss today because there really has been a lot of movement in the NHL and the Canadiens are one of them. And it's really funny you mentioned the kiss of death thing because Chuck Fletcher, I believe, got that like a couple months ago.
Yes.
I don't even remember when it was now. So, Flyers fans.
Somebody else got it like last week too.
Yeah. I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. It really is. And but the Canadiens axing Ducharme, like you said, even before a calendar year, right? Because isn't the anniversary of them firing Claude Julien and them hiring him like right around the corner or something? Like it's really close. And obviously you said he led them to that Stanley Cup final. I think a lot of that was on the back of Carey Price, who they do not have this year. And, bad goaltending can sink a coach, as we've seen many, many times over the years, and good goaltending can elevate a bad coach. I'm not saying Ducharme was a bad coach necessarily. I think maybe there's too little evidence. maybe this is just me. It feels like he's hardly like coached any games at all. And I don't know. I don't think the Habs collapsing in any way is his fault, but I can see why, at least from their perspective, they decided to make this move because, you know, the Habs are really bad, Andrew, and you know this, I think, better than anyone else, especially of the two of us. But you know this better than anyone else. The Habs are very, very bad this year, and it's at this point like an embarrassment to the league and the organization. I think is the way things are looking now. So
Well, that's why this happened, right?
yeah,
Like,
I was gonna say that's probably why this happened because they had to generate some positive press. I don't even know if this is positive press necessarily, but they had to
I don't
do
think
something.
it's press. I don't think it's press. I think this is about not being a joke, right? And the Canadiens have been bad this season, historically bad, but for most of the season they weren't full on a joke. But the last few weeks they have been a joke. And when fans start coming back into the arena as COVID restrictions get lifted on February 24th here, or 21st, you cannot have people spending $400 for a ticket and know that they're going to lose 7-1 every game. That can't happen. So things needed to change. The players in the room needed a breath of fresh air. They needed to learn how to have fun again with the game because, frankly, it's been such a downer of a year. Nobody's happy, and it seems like Martin St. Louis has a bit of energy to bring that. The first game under him looked really fun. Like they were all engaged, and that could just be like new coach fever, but it looked decent. Now, Ducharme, I feel like, is getting all the blame when he shouldn't get all the blame because you don't get to be this bad with one problem.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
The Canadiens lead the league in man games lost even without Shea Weber counting. Like, they were dealt a double blow of losing Weber and Price before the season started. Then they also lost Joel Edmondson, who was arguably their second or third best defenseman last year. Like, he hasn't played a game yet. They came into the season with one top four defenseman, and that was Jeff Petry, and he's had the worst season of his career. Like, it's just everything has gone against them. They've dealt with COVID worse than most teams have. They've dealt with injuries worse than any team has.
And I mean, this is like this. You can trace all this back to their offseason too. I mean, they lost Phil Deneau. They lost Kakiniemi too. I mean, we mentioned that when those moves happened, that this was not going to be the team that we saw make the Stanley Cup final.
No, but the DNA changed completely.
Yeah, but this is like all these moves compounded into something I don't think we've ever seen in the NHL before. I don't think we've seen a steep drop off from, Stanley Cup contention to where they are now. And
no,
the Canadiens,
there's never been a drop off this severe.
No, and the
NHL
Canadiens
history
deserve to be in the Stanley Cup final. They, they got lucky in certain regards of, the team's best centers that they faced, were injured or something happened to them. I get.
I
like,
still
I get
say
it.
That's a BS line. Honestly.
I'm just parodying what Twitter says, and just for the sake of argument.
We only look at the injuries
here.
of one team.
Yeah. I know. I'm agreeing here though that the Canadiens deserve to be there. They played some really good hockey, really suffocating hockey in the playoffs, and it's just you said it, I think, correctly. The DNA of this team changed, and it changed so drastically that they are now the worst modern team we've seen in the NHL, and an embarrassment to the league, and they needed to change something. I put in the doc, did they really actually need to change something? Because, what if they start to go on a winning streak? Isn't it better for the Canadiens to actually be big losers this year? I know that the city of Montreal and the NHL as a whole probably doesn't want to hear that, but I have not looked at the standings in a bit, but I think that they are pretty close with Arizona for the bottom of the NHL.
Oh, they're way behind Arizona.
Oh, they are?
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, they're 5 points back of Arizona. Now, they have 2 games in hand, but here's the thing about the Canadiens is I feel like they could go on a winning streak and it would not matter at all. They will still be a bottom 2 or bottom 3 team this year, and the gap in odds between, like, 32nd, 31st, and 30th, like, honestly, it's not that big. And frankly, as much as they do want the first overall pick this year, to continue playing the way that they were playing, to let that persist, is so damaging for everyone on that team who might remain in the organization that I cannot see it being worth it. Like, there's being bad and losing, and then there's being an absolute joke. And you started to see some cracks along the veneer of the Montreal Canadiens players of not hiding it anymore. Jeff Petry in recent weeks has talked about how he was like upset with the system that Dom Ducharme was running and how like nobody knew what to be doing and the responsibilities weren't clear. And I think a lot of guys just stopped playing, not necessarily for Ducharme, but just the uselessness of playing out the rest of the schedule combined with not enjoying playing in that system was brutal. And I think that you look at guys like Caulfield, who went and scored 1 goal all season, and the first game that Martin St. Louis is there, he scores not once but twice. Now, one of them was disallowed on an icing review, which frankly had zero impact on the play, and I am not convinced that they could conclusively make that call the way that they did based on the rules. I think they ruled based on skates, which was the wrong way to rule. Because the puck didn't actually exit the zone. But I digress. He scored twice after not scoring basically the entire season. So I don't think that's a coincidence. The first one, maybe. The second one, no. And he was so dynamic in that game. He looked like the weight of the world had been lifted off his shoulders. I think we're going to see more benefit from them being not terrible the rest of the way. And they'll probably still find ways to lose because, frankly, they have terrible goaltenders until Price comes back. So there's just a lot of positive to take out of this, even if you're maybe minorly poorly impacting your draft lottery chances. I think that Cole Caulfield not being ruined is more important than the difference between Shane Wright and the next best player.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And do you really like the Canadiens have to be like this year, obviously a lost cause. So they're looking forward to the future of what this franchise can do. And you're right. If, you get stuck in this rut of losing and just toxic negativity, it can ruin players. So yeah, I'm glad it seems at least there was a positive first step forward for them. We'll see how it goes the rest of the season. And Martin St. Louis, they said, is an interim head coach. I mean, obviously he can, become like the actual head coach. We've seen that, path from interim to like the full-time head coach. Craig Berube is a big one. I mean, I know he had the turnaround of a lifetime in St. Louis, but that's the one that always comes to mind. So that he could still possibly become the full-time head coach, but for now he's interim. So he has no head coaching experience, but his thighs are glorious, Andrew. So
yes.
What do you think?
Oh my God. Did you see my tweet?
Yes, I saw your tweet, and then I posted it in my work Slack because a couple people were talking about it because they also posted that picture, and I'm like, that's his legacy. It's his thighs are his legacy, and
his legacy.
Him. Yes, his legacy, Andrew. All right.
That
was so bad. That was so bad. I think we need to just move along with that because I don't think we could get bogged down in the dad jokes right now.
We absolutely can get bogged down, but I watched a bit of Martin St. Louis' introductory press conference, and he said possibly the most progressive thing I've heard out of the Canadiens organization in my entire life, which was he was talking about systems, and he was saying like to him as a player, systems always annoyed him because they're so rigid, and you get told you can do one of whatever many things, and for the best players, you end up becoming average because the best players can read and react to things in a dynamic way and make the best plays. But if you're so obsessed with systems and everyone has to fit into that box, you end up like bringing everyone to the average. And like, yes, some of the bad players will be better in that situation because you're kind of building them up by giving them structure. But he was basically arguing like you can have concepts without being a rigid system, and those concepts can still lift those bad players, but the good players are allowed to be free. And he was saying like he would rather a good player make a bad play and learn from it than make an average play and continued to do the average play. And I was like, whoa, that's not NHL coach speak.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, he has no NHL coaching experience or any head coaching experience. Really, he was coaching under 13 AAA hockey, but that's super refreshing. And that makes me think, a little bit of Ted Lasso and a little bit of Rod Brindamore mixed in there, that the Canadiens might have actually found something here. I mean, nobody's going to argue that Martin St. Louis is a bad hockey mind, right?
Oh, no.
He's the oldest player to ever lead the league in scoring.
And
he
I
did it
think
at 37.
And I think that this is a good opportunity here. I mean, I mentioned that he has no head coaching experience, and usually that would, tip people off and whatnot. But I think this is a good thing for the Canadiens because they're building towards the future. And I don't think they're going to be competitive immediately next year unless a lot of things change. They add pieces, some of their young pieces step up. But this could be a very good role that, San Luis, grows with the team and, progresses and really builds something from the ground up here. If the Canadiens, sell at the deadline, basically change out a lot of things about the old guard of this team in the summer or at the trade deadline. And, they start afresh and, San Luis is still the head coach. I think that they really could be building something here. They could build something together. And I think that'd be really cool and unique. We don't see a lot of head coaches starting out in this league. Like, we talk about the coaching carousel and how, that just keeps on turning. And we'll talk about that when we get to the Oilers later in the podcast, I'm sure. But I think this is a really good thing for them. And, I know San Luis is a, former hockey player, obviously, a hockey mind. But I think this is a good thing for them. And it'd be really cool to see them grow together as, a team under him with, fresh ideas and stuff like that. Because you're right. I have never heard a head coach in the NHL say something that innovative before. So it's the positive signs early are looking good. Obviously very low sample size, not a lot really to go on, but like I said, I think this is a good first step forward for the Canadiens, and I think it can only go up from here, Andrew, because
it's hard.
I think we've seen rock bottom for this team. They're still going to be bad, but I don't think they're going to be as embarrassingly abysmal as they have been over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, 100%. All right, this is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you ever tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamony, coconut, marshmallow, banana cream pie, so good. These are going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, Puffs included. 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar that usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Mint brownie, coconut, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It'll be delicious, and it'll be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thanks again for making that's not it. Thanks again for making the Cross-Check NHL Show your first listen every Tuesday and Friday. Make sure to check out the Olympic Hockey Daily Show presented by Locked On NHL, a bonus podcast covering all the action in Beijing. You can find it on the Locked On NHL podcast feed. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So, Mary, speaking of Olympics, we got to do a little bit of an Olympic recap here because...
God, Andrew.
Hey,
God.
Team Canada currently playing...
I think they just
is
finished.
absolutely blowing team. Oh yeah, okay. They just finished the game.
Finished.
So last I checked, it was 11-0. It finished 11-0.
Yeah, I think that's what I finished. Oh
this Canadian team is the most dynamic offensive team I've ever seen.
Yeah, they were. I mean, yeah, it was. They have been scoring the lights out on every single team they have faced. I think except Team USA, and we should probably.
They did kind of score the lights out on Team USA because they were tired as hell from the game before, like less than 20 hours before.
I mean, didn't I call it? Didn't I call it that they were going to start slow?
I was wrong. I thought that they were going to get not speed bagged by the USA, but just lose a tight game. But the USA controlled the puck for the most part. I think the Canadian ladies were just absolutely exhausted. And then once the USA took the lead, it was like a switch flipped a little bit, and they're like,
Canada
"Oh, okay,
took the lead,
let's
Andrew.
score." No. When USA took the lead 2-1,
okay.
Canada took the early lead right on the power play, and they just kind of like sat back and were like, "Oh, maybe we can just like rest on our laurels here, and we'll win it 1-0, and we'll get the 2 points or whatever." And the USA obviously was not going to go away quietly. They tied it up and then took the lead, and then a switch flipped for Canada, and they were like, we're just going to score 3 goals now. It was just like bang, bang, bang right away, and finished off by Mary Clarke with the beautiful penalty shot goal, which a bunch of people were complaining about. And it's like, you realize that just because she gets a shot doesn't erase the fact that she got slashed on a clear breakaway.
That's fine. I mean, it's just more that, we know Marie Clarke is going to do her thing against the United States. And that's just, the nail in the coffin, as it were. But we'll start with Canada because Canada's been really good. They're cruising to the semifinal. Basically, I have no idea who they face, and I have no idea when Team USA plays again because that game happened late last night, and once it ended, I was like, it's bedtime because God, it is just the schedule is brutal. But I think we're having a good time, but for different reasons. But I want to talk a little bit about the stress of Team USA and the potential pitfalls that will befall Team USA if they don't fix some things, because sure, they have been winning, but they played a really close game against, is it Czechia?
It's confusing because
the broadcast doesn't say it, or at least the US
the broadcast is saying Czech Republic now, but in the World Juniors, the Czechs specifically asked to be called Czechia, but apparently they haven't asked that for the Olympics.
Yeah.
So it's still Czech Republic here. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Just have a sports federation, figure out what you want to be called, and I'll call you that.
I know. I had to deal with it when I was looking up stuff about, since I was writing stuff about the Olympics. But that's not the point here. They played a really close game against them. And it looked really precarious for a little bit because they took the lead over the United States, and the United States was dominating shots again. That's kind of the narrative for Team USA in these Olympics so far. They dominate the shot count, and for the first couple of games, they were really outscoring their opponents. They were putting up, 6-7 goals a game, but the shot counts and shot distribution were completely, one-sided towards Team USA. And it was the same in the Canada game. In the round-robin game, they lost, I believe, 4-2. They had an incredible first period, and nothing went in because, the Canadian goaltender stood on her head. And just things weren't going in. And then, of course, Canada pots a goal on the power play, and then you could just feel it deflate a bit for Team USA. And also, I've seen this before. This has happened to the Flyers many times over the years. Not to this extreme dominance, but I have seen this play before. So, you get that. And then, of course, they tie it up and take the lead, but then Canada comes back. But, the big thing right now you're going to hear from people talking about Team USA is the power play and how pitiful it has been for a team that has this much talent. They just seem to circle the puck around the zone. They don't seem to get anything into the interior. It's all exterior work. I mean, Canada blocked a ton of shots in that game. against the US. I don't remember the complete number, but it seems like every shot that they were taking was being blocked by Canada. And, incredible job to the Canadian women for that. It was a really awesome game. I have not gotten that angry about a sporting event in some time, and I missed it. It was great. It really was. It was a fun game. It's great to hate Canada, but you have to respect their talent. They're just so good at what they do. But I think Team USA is kind of being held back a little bit by their coaching. They're out shooting their opponents, and the same thing happened against Czechia or Czech Republic. They outshot their opponents, but they got the first goal against Team USA on their first shot, and then you felt, oh no. Thankfully, the United States came right back, and I believe tied it like near instantly. But it was bad, and there are decisions being made that I don't necessarily understand. I'm not going to get into the full, X's and O's of it, but it just seems like that their mantra is quantity over quality. And I don't think that's going to cut it in now that we move into the semifinals. I mean, it's great to get a bunch of shots, but if they're all like shots on the exterior, like by the point and, not really any high danger chances, I think I felt that there was a possibility of an upset coming into Thursday night, partially because there were a lot of things happening for me on Thursday night, and it would be very funny if Team USA lost and I had to log on at like 2 a.m. to write something for the morning. So that was in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, this would be the biggest thing to happen. And of course I have to, write something for the morning for work because, I'm the one covering women's hockey. I should be the one writing something, but I don't know. I just got this feeling out of that Canada game that they're not being coached up to where they can be. And it was a really big scare for them against Czechia. And we'll see if they change things around for the semifinal. I have no idea who they face. I don't know when it is. I hate to say that because the games have been really good and I'm really excited for it. I just have not seen the schedule yet. But it worries me, Andrew. I think it is. It's concerning.
I'm not worried about the USA.
Yeah, you say that, but
here's the thing. Yes, they did struggle for a bit to get through Czechia, but the Czech goaltender was absolutely absurd.
This is true. Yes, she was incredible.
The shots were 59-6.
Yeah.
The fact is, Czechia got lucky to get one. I think that's where I come along here. And for maybe there was some panic in the United States game a little bit, but they just stuck with it and powered through and eventually got through. So to me, that's a positive that they didn't just get the 2 goals and try to sit on it. That they kept going and we need to pile on more goals.
Yeah, I mean the entire game was basically played in Czechia's end.
Here's what worries me about the USA. These are games where they should win easily outside of Canada in the round robin, right? Why on earth are Jinsey Dunn and Caroline Harvey playing 0 minutes and 0 seconds?
I don't know, Andrew. Ask the coaches. This is what I'm saying.
And I've seen a lot of people on USA Hockey Twitter being like, what the hell is going on? And apparently this is not a new thing.
No. This reminds me a lot
That's questionable.
This reminds me, I don't follow women's soccer, but I catch enough to know that similar problems happened in women's soccer, that they sat players that should have been playing. And they basically outcoached themselves, basically, in the years that I don't think they disappointed in a recent Olympics. I don't remember which one. I'm sorry that I am
not
blanking.
Olympic. Oh, the Team USA soccer team?
Yeah. I'm equating them
was
to
it
each
the
other.
last Olympics where Canada beat them?
No, I don't think it was that.
I'm just going to keep bringing that up.
That's fine. I'm not the biggest soccer fan, so I know I'm kind of fumbling through this, but I've seen people talk about the parallels between the U.S. women's soccer team and the U.S. women's hockey team in terms of the way that they're outcoaching themselves. At least that's how I see it, in my opinion.
Know what it is the Team USA has Canada disease, because you look at the last decade plus of Canada versus USA rivalry, and yes, Team Canada has won out in the Olympics, but that required a massive comeback in 2014, right? Even 2010 was tight, and they lost in Pyeongchang. You look at the world championships and stuff, and the United States for a long stretch was winning everything. And every game that those two teams played, I thought the United States was faster, more dominant on the puck, and they were playing their young players more. And Canada was really leaning on vets who were getting left behind, slow skaters. And part of the change has been a couple of the Canada's older players have changed their game. Like Natalie Spooner. I thought the last time I saw Natalie Spooner play internationally that she looked slow and she wasn't very effective. This year, she is a monster. She's leaned into her strength. She's a net driving presence. She's the key to her line. She makes so much space for the Sarahs. Like, she's just incredible. And that's crazy, but also Team Canada has leaned into going younger. You know, players like Sarah Fillier are getting big roles, and that's huge. And Team USA, to me, looks like they're resisting change. And this is why, like, I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the Noxie and Cax podcast that SDPN just debuted, but they had their second episode.
I've heard it's great.
It is great. And their second episode, they had Casey Bellamy on. And Casey Bellamy made Team USA. And then after making it, saw, like, she looked at herself and was like, my heart's not 100% in it. Why would I take a job from somebody else? And, like, first of all, oh my God, the wherewithal to do that as a professional athlete, so much respect for Casey Bellamy to step aside and let somebody else take that role. But the fact that she made it when her heart's not 100% in it tells me that they're maybe leaning too much on their vets.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you can also trace that to the men's side, or at least when NHL players were there. It's much harder for me to, say that about Team USA when they're made up of a bunch of college kids and former NHLers and stuff like that. But the same problem was plagued Team USA when, they had NHL players on their roster. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I'm just worried, Andrew. And you can probably tell. I mean, I know you're probably still thinking Team USA is pretty deadly, and they are, but I can see them beating themselves here. I mean, their power play shouldn't be nearly as bad. Thankfully, I believe they scored a power play goal against Czechia, but they had multiple power plays at the end of the Canada game, and they didn't do anything on them. Like, Canada was just, like, keeping them to the exterior, and, it felt like watching a Flyers power play, and that's not good. You do not want to emulate the Flyers power play. They are bad at power plays, and it was just it's frustrating. Those games, the end of the Canada game was frustrating. I mean, the whole thing was frustrating in a sense, but at least the start of the game was like good, like sports frustrating, because that's kind of how sports goes sometimes. You can dominate the shot count and then, let one in. But a lot of these like games have been frustrating and not unnecessarily stressful, because you can see the talent is there. It feels like Team USA has won when they've won big games. They've won it in spite of their coaching. So I'm hoping that, changes are made and adjustments are made. So I have no idea who the semifinal is against, but I'm hoping, USA makes it out of that. So we get our Canada-USA final. I mean, I think that's what we all want here, but I think it's overall good for the sport that game last night was so close. That was really awesome to see. And isn't it their first time at the Olympics tour? Did I mishear that or something like that? But
I'm not sure about that.
But Czechia had a really, really awesome showing. All the props in the world to them. That was such a hard-fought game. Even though they got outshot so much, they made the most of their chances. They made Team USA sweat. And not many countries can say that. Canada can, absolutely. But you do not get that type of performance from Team USA. And that's at least a moral victory. And whomever wrote that article, which we didn't even talk about, that, women's hockey shouldn't be in the Olympics, should feel absolutely ashamed of themselves. You have to be watching these games. That was incredible last night. So stressful. So awesome. Women's hockey is so good. And we're seeing the competition be elevated year after year. And this is a prime example of it, Andrew.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about that article because
I just mentioned it in passing, but that was one of my thoughts last night. That was like, God, this game is so good. It really is. It's so fun. And I'm so happy to see women's hockey growing like this, that a team like Czechia, who hasn't, as far as I'm aware, not really done anything in women's hockey, really pushed Team USA to their limits. And it was awesome to see. I'm just really excited for the future of the sport, and just, God, am I nervous for the rest of the tournament because, oh man, it's going to be a wild ride, Andrew. It's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, and the person who wrote that article is like a pretty famous opinion columnist for having the most shitty takes in all of Canada. She sucks. She's been writing that same column since 1997. She just regurgitates it every time there's a big women's tournament and gets a lot of clicks. So don't give her those clicks. Listen to what actual people who cover the game and understand the sport say. But we'll move on from the Olympics for now. But first, I got to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs. That's right, it's Super Bowl Sunday coming up this weekend. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of the all-new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. So the Edmonton Oilers did the same thing as the Canadiens just a day later, and they waited until I fell asleep, and then they fired their coach. Just like the Canadiens earlier this year, they said that they wouldn't be firing their coach, and they brought in their, I believe, American Hockey League guy, which is what almost every single Oilers fan that I follow wanted to happen, because he's apparently done a really, really good job down in, I think, Bakersfield is their
That sounds right.
American Hockey League affiliate. So they're really happy. Dave Tippett becomes the fall guy. But the funniest thing about this, because I don't know, I think Dave Tippett's a fine defensive coach. Edmonton's underlying numbers are actually not that bad, despite their roster being a joke. So I feel like Tippett, his tactics weren't perfect. There are definitely some things and some player deployment issues there, but I think he's kind of getting the axe for Ken Holland being an idiot. And the next guy, hopefully he can do better, because I would like to see it just for Oilers fans who are long suffering. And I think we all want to see Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in the playoffs. But I think this is still on Ken Holland more than anything. Mm-hmm. And I find it very funny that Edmonton media is putting all the blame on Connor McDavid.
Oh, Andrew, I mean, we talked about it when we talked about the Leon Draisaitl stuff, however many weeks ago it was. That Edmonton media isn't the best necessarily, and hasn't been for some time. So this was a predictable outcome, a sad outcome, but a predictable one, I think. You're right. Dave Tippett seemed to have, paid the price for Ken Holland's mistakes, and I don't know what it's going to take to. Actually, I think I do know what it's going to take to get him out of there. If the Oilers miss the playoffs again this year, I think we're going to see drastic changes. They have to. There's no way that they can keep going the way it is if the Oilers miss the playoffs or even have a disastrous first round exit like they did last year. Like, did they have a disastrous exit last year? Did I make that up?
Yeah, they got swept by the Winnipeg Jets, who then got swept by the Montreal Canadiens.
Cool. That's what I thought, and I wanted to make sure because I said that. Like, wait, that doesn't sound right. So good, awesome, glad I was right on that regard. But I think that's the only way this team makes sweeping changes, or at least some changes in their front office. And we've mentioned it before. I'll mention it again. The Oilers have to do something. The Vander Kane thing can only push them so far. They need goaltending. They need goaltending real bad. And they need to make a move or they're going to run out of runway. They're, I think, 5 points out of a wild card, and they had 2 straight losses, which is what prompted this firing. Not like the biggest, skid in the world, but still a skid.
I think it's how they started, because they had that little rebound where they won, I think, 5 in a row. But they still, almost every single game, they start really poorly. Mm-hmm. And so they have to battle back all the time. So I feel like that's what made the decision, is that their preparation is garbage and the players aren't engaged to start the game. And then it comes down to the stars to basically score their way back into the game every single game. And some games you just can't do it. It's not sustainable to play that way. I was going to
say it's not sustainable. But yeah, I hope we all want Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to make the playoffs. We want them to succeed. We want them to win a Stanley Cup. Those are the facts. And you as an NHL fan should want that. You should want more people seeing Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in the playoffs, doing their awesome thing, succeeding as players, making really awesome highlights and getting people into the games. So you can only want that for this Edmonton Oilers team. I know if you're, a Calgary Flames fan, you don't want that. But for the good of the league, you want Connor McDavid to succeed.
But they have a bit of an uphill battle here. They have games in hand, so like they can just overtake them. They actually have a worse winning percentage than the Ducks, but they are 6 points behind with 4 games in hand. So if they were to win all 4, they'd have a better winning percentage, but that's a gigantic if for that team. They just haven't been that good.
And there's also the fact that they've gone through, I believe, 8 head coaches in the last 10 years, Andrew. I know that the shelf life of an average NHL coach isn't that long, but still, that's a lot of coaches. That's a lot. That's so many. The turnover rate, like, you don't get settled if you have that. I mean, I know NHL seasons are long, but like, you don't. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl have been dragged around and ragdolled enough in their careers between coaches and what they want them to do, because each coach has their own systems, has their own way of doing things. I mean, but like, just as a team overall, going through 8 head coaches in 10 years is a lot, and that speaks to something bigger than just the players on this team. It's the management that is the issue here, that they are not, giving the team the assets it needs to succeed if they just keep thinking the coaches are the problem. The coaches aren't the problem here. Dave Tippett had to be the fall guy here because something had to change for Edmonton. I don't know if he was necessarily a really good coach in terms of, bringing them to their full potential, but he certainly wasn't helped by the moves that they have made and have not made. So it is. I know it feels like we talk about the Oilers all the time on the show, but they are such a fascinating team to me and are so important to the health of the NHL. It's much like people like talk about, like, I know probably the Leafs are the most important team to the health of the NHL because that market is so huge, but Edmonton too has a lot to bring to the table, and we've wasted a lot of years with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl not making it to the playoffs or bowing out in the first round. I don't know. It's frustrating and a shame that we're seeing this talent wasted on something that probably should have been really easy to do. The hardest thing the Oilers probably could have had to do is manage their cap situation around their 2 best players. And they haven't even built anything good around them, it seems. Like I thought this was the deepest forward core maybe the Oilers have had, in the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl era, but everything else around them, bad, terrible. Goaltending situation, just completely awful, inexcusable at this point.
Yeah, defense, expensive, and also terrible. They bought heavy on Cody Ceci, huge mistake. Bought heavy on Duncan Keith for leadership, huge mistake, not a leader, total loser, coming from the worst organization in the sport. And they bought heavy on Tyson Barrie on a season where he just piled up power play points, feeding McDavid and Draisaitl. And like, yeah, okay, you think maybe that'll happen again until he gets completely eclipsed by Evan Bouchard and isn't even on the top power play unit. And now you've got him signed for another 3 years for no reason. So yeah, a bunch of dumb moves by Ken Holland have put them in this situation, and they don't have a lot of cap flexibility.
What do you think they're going to do before the deadline? Because the deadline is approaching. I know we're still in the middle of the Olympics. I know it's later this year, but
I can tell you what I think they should do.
Yeah. What?
I think they should, because Ken Holland said that he's not interested in a rental, right? He wants somebody with term. I look at their defense and I look at Darnell Nurse, and I think Darnell Nurse needs a legitimate partner. Because if you can make an actual really good first pair on D, that can change everything for them at even strength. Everyone gets bumped down a little bit, less stress on them. The first D can play with their McDavid line or their Draisaitl line and just crush teams, right? How about somebody who's already familiar with the organization, who likes the city? Jeff Petry. The Canadiens are looking to trade him. He doesn't necessarily want out so much as he's open to a trade. He hasn't been around his family all year. His wife and kids went back to Detroit. So the thought is that they're probably looking for a trade to the USA. But I know that he was comfortable in Edmonton. He liked it there. Apparently his family liked it there. So that's an open thing for me. And I think you put Jeff Petry on a team that's possibly going to make the playoffs, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, sit him with Darnell Nurse instead of Ben Sherratt, you're going to get the good version of Jeff Petry again. And that could change a lot of things for the Edmonton Oilers. And also, they need to get a goalie. I don't care who it is, but it can't be Mike Smith. He's done.
It's not the sexiest pick, but I'm here for it. I don't think that they need to be like, they need to get the biggest name. I think they just need to get somebody solid, like really solid for them. It doesn't have to be the biggest name. It just needs to be, they just need to make their defense and goaltending better. It doesn't need to be the biggest wow, gotcha, awesome moments. I guess in their minds, they probably think Evander Kane is that, considering, you know, what he brings or has brought offensively. But they don't need to like wow with a big name. They need to get somebody steady. They just need somebody there for them, because it is bad. And I know it feels like, I said, it feels like we talk about the Oilers every week, but they're incredibly fascinating to me just from all angles, from, you know, the team, from the media around them. It's not anything like we've seen in the NHL, mostly because they continue to repeat the same mistakes over and over again, and they never seem to learn. So they're a tire fire. We talk about them because they're a tire fire. Yeah. All right, we're gonna talk about some pop culture stuff in a second here, because we're gonna do our pop culture roulette segment. We're done with hockey. Friendship with hockey over. All right, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all of the parts that you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is also a family business that serves do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts that your car will ever need. rockauto.com. So, Mary, I don't know if you watched anything other than the Olympics and sports over the last little while, but I did take some time out to finish the Book of Boba Fett with my wife. You can absolutely 100% spoil it for me, because I don't care. I might end up watching the Mandalorian preseason 3 stuff, basically, but I do not care about the stuff I have seen so far in the Book of Boba Fett. So spoil away, Andrew.
All right, so spoilers for everybody who hasn't watched it. It's fine. The season was so uneven. Like, I like what they did with Boba Fett's character. I liked the humanizing of the Tuskens, essentially making them an indigenous tribe, and the fact that they were just seen as a burden and savages by everyone except for Boba, who grew to know them and be accepted by them. That was cool. And the fact that kind of gave him like a kinship with them and tied him to Tatooine. But I feel like they failed to expand upon that and instead tried to go for this, like, and also he wants to be a crime lord thing, but doesn't really want to be involved in crime, but also wants to fight a war. And also it's the Mandalorian now. And also it's Jedi time now with Grogu. And also, no, we're not doing that because he's choosing not to be a Jedi. Like, it was just so much. And I feel like this is a season that really should have been like 13, 14 episodes, and they should have taken their time and kept the same tone as the first 3 or 4 episodes, because it just seemed like they set up Boba Fett's character, didn't go anywhere with it, and then tacked on a bunch of stuff to set up other Star Wars stuff at the expense of Boba's character.
Yeah.
And I don't really care about Boba Fett. Like, he just didn't ever matter to me. Like, I really
kind of a blank
Tamara
slate.
Morrison.
He was kind of a blank slate. Yeah.
People project their own, oh, he's cool thing because he had a helmet and a jetpack, but it's
the rogue mystique. It's the Lone Ranger mystique. Or
but that,
mercenary mystique.
I don't know. I find almost everyone in Star Wars, like the original trilogy, that becomes like a cult thing, is that because they look cool. Like if you actually watch the old Star Wars movies, Darth Vader is not that cool. The only time Darth Vader is ever cool is in Rogue One.
Rogue One. I was going to say, it's that sequence at the end of Rogue One.
Yeah, Rogue One is a shit movie where almost nothing makes sense and there's no stakes whatsoever because you know everybody's going to die. That movie exists as a vehicle to show... Yeah, for sure. But less because the prequels actually did some storytelling, right? Rogue One does no storytelling.
You know where the characters
where it's going.
Yeah, the characters can't appear because they don't. They have to die. You know this from the outset, so it kind of ruins a little bit of it.
At the very least, the prequels had some story to tell of like how they got there, whereas I don't think Rogue One did that. Rogue One was just a vehicle because they wanted to do that hallway scene. That's it.
The end was great of Rogue One.
Yes.
It was great. It's
and
probably
I will
one of the
watch
best
that
things
scene.
Star Wars has done.
And I'll watch that scene 100 times. Like it's fantastic. But the movie was crap. But Boba Fett does not interest me because Star Wars has this thing where they make a bad guy and they make them look really cool and dangerous, and then they always go out like a punk. Like think about like even the Emperor. Darth Vader picked him up and threw him down an elevator shaft. This is the most powerful Force user in the galaxy, and he can't like force jump off of a wall.
Has to be a little cheesy though. Maybe that's just the limitations of the time. I don't know.
The cheese is just like Star Wars builds these grand ideas and then they have nowhere to go with them and they can't stick the landing. Like, they never stick the landing.
I can't even remember how the end of Rise of Skywalker goes. What happens to Palpatine? I don't remember.
Oh, he's using Force lightning on Rey, and she's catching it with the lightsaber. Oh, that's right.
I do remember
and
the whole
the Force
really
gives
awesome...
her a second lightsaber, and then she puts the lightsabers together, and the two lightsabers together magically makes the lightning go back onto Palpatine, and you're like, huh? And then he explodes. And yeah, it was dumb. The whole movie's dumb.
They have some good character moments in there, not related to Kylo Ren, just related to Rey, who I still love very dearly.
The third one?
Yeah, I thought I'm trying to remember. Is that like the whole like where she hears the voices thing at the end? I thought that was nice. That played on my emotions just a tiny bit. I haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker since I saw it in theater, so I may be misremembering. But
I think it's the worst Star Wars movie, like worse than the prequels.
My friends get into this all the time. I don't want to talk about. I've had enough of like rehashing the Star Wars argument. I can't do it anymore. I'm out. I'm sitting this one out. I enjoyed the little things that I like from the sequel trilogy, and everything else I cannot spend energy arguing about it because people still spend their energy arguing over all those movies. I'm like, I can't do it. How do you have the energy to do this anymore? I just don't know.
But can we agree that Ben Solo's redemption was super dumb?
Yes. 100%.
And unearned in every possible way.
She should have just killed him, and he should have just stayed dead when she stabbed him, when she did.
Yes. 100%.
I completely, yes, we're 100% agreed on that train. If they had maybe built up his here's the thing. They tried to, I don't know if you've ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender. They tried to Zuko Kylo Ren, and nobody can.
But they didn't still tell the story, right? Like,
yeah. You have to have, you have to lay the groundwork. And that's why Avatar works so well in that regard and making their villain redemption work. I mean, I know it's a little bit longer form in a TV show, but if you want to see a villain redemption done really well, or at least an antagonistic redemption story done well, because I don't even know if Zuko is necessarily the big villain. There's a lot of meta text written around it because that show has been out for so long, but please watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. They do that really well, and I don't think any other story has ever been able to do a redemption arc in the way they do that. But anyway, just watch Avatar. It's a great show.
I literally watched a video yesterday while there was like a break in the Olympic coverage, so I got to like watch something that I wanted to watch other than the Olympics, comparing Kylo Ren to Zuko and saying like, this is why he changes his mind. Kylo Ren changes his mind because Kylo Ren changes his mind. And it's like there's no understanding of like why his worldview changes. So okay, we're getting bogged down here, but anyway, the Book of Boba Fett, there's some really cool stuff in it. I really liked seeing Ahsoka. I liked seeing Luke. I know that people get stuck in the uncanny valley thing. What I didn't like is that they used an AI program to do the lines for Luke Skywalker instead of just
Mark
getting
Hamill,
one of the best voice actors in the goddamn world who plays the goddamn character to do it. I don't understand that. And I find this is like one of those Lucasfilm things like, we have the best technology. It's like, shut the freaking hell up and let Mark Hamill do it. He will want to do it. But anyway, I digress. I still think it was cool to see Luke again. And I also thought it was nice that they showed like his flaws are inherent and you can see them right away, that he's trying to reestablish the old ways of the Jedi. I hope that the Kenobi series that's going to come out shows the truth of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I know everybody loves Obi-Wan Kenobi, but the truth of Obi-Wan Kenobi is that he's a failure, a gigantic failure, and the entire Jedi Order is a gigantic failure. And that's what I wanted The Last Jedi to be about, because that's what they showed in the damn previews. And then it was like, at the end, oh, well, actually, the Jedi are good, and Rey, you're the next Jedi. Like, no, destroy the Jedi Order forever. Realize that it's not about attachments. Like, even in The Mandalorian, or not The Mandalorian, I mean, Freudian slip, because that's what the last bit of it was. When they had, like, Ahsoka there with Luke, which was really cool, and she had a line like, oh, you're just like your father, which was like goosebumps for anybody who's watched the Clone Wars. It was really cool. But her talking about like Grogu having an attachment to the Mandalorian being a problem, that these Jedi still don't understand that the reason why Anakin turned to the dark side was not because he was attached to Padme. It's because he was raised as a slave and then bought by space wizards who told him he was special, who instead of counseling him, decided to tell him that he was the chosen one. And then when his mother was murdered, they gave him no counseling. And he was just sitting there dealing with trauma, showing sign after sign that he was like dealing with major mental health issues and anger management. He became the most decorated general in the Clone Wars. And instead of, being... they rewarded him essentially for breaking the rules all the time, using him for propaganda to sell this war, which the Jedi were supposedly for peace. Give me a break. They're called generals in the Clone Wars. And then he turns to the dark side because they're constantly lying to him and telling him he's special and amazing, and then taking that all away at the last second. And like, it's this constant back and forth. Of course he goes to the guy who's always telling him what he wants to hear. It has nothing to do with attachment. He was manipulated from day one by both sides and went with the one who treated him like an adult. That's what happened. It has nothing to do with attachments.
Saying, Andrew, is that the
Jedis are dumb.
Yeah, Jedis are dumb. Jedis are bad. It'd be cool if the series, like, I get it. Cool, swishy laser sword. Awesome. Yes. That's really cool. Like, I still love the power fantasy is awesome. I don't think there's many things in fiction like a lightsaber and like being a Jedi. No, it's the coolest. That's why like the video games are so awesome. If you ever play them, you just feel so cool. It just feels so awesome. Like, but they're also the Jedi organization, bad, not good.
Yes.
If Star Wars like deconstructed the Jedi narrative and, I don't know. I don't know all the Jedi lore, but I know enough that it's not, they've done a lot of harm to people, and, their ways and teachings did a lot of harm to people. And like, if they could deconstruct that and maybe, build a different type of like, I don't know, move away from the Jedi as an organization and just be like, here's a cool swishy lightsaber, have some fun, kids, which is I think what we all want. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe there can be some nuance here.
That's why The Mandalorian is so good, right? Is it moves itself a little bit away from the Jedi, and you don't have to be stuck with this idea of like the good guys have this super puritanical weird belief structure that makes no sense. And like, hey, The Mandalorian has some weird belief structure, but you know what? There was hints in this series that what he believes is going to be flipped on its head coming up in the Mandalorian season 3. There was a lot of hints towards that, which is super interesting. That kind of harken back to the Clone Wars as well. But they're never going to break down the Jedi introspectively because they did a hint of that and The Last Jedi, and the toxic fan
and
base
then
of Star
people
Wars lost their
got
shit.
mad at Luke, and like I said, I don't want to rehash. Yeah, I don't want to rehash. I feel like we as a society spend too much time arguing about Star Wars. I think that there are other things to occupy our time with, like sports or other video games. There are a lot of really awesome things coming out that I'm excited for, that, by this time next week, I will be playing the sequel to one of my favorite video games of all time, and I am so excited, and I cannot be mad about anything else. I just need to get through this week, Andrew. At this point, I was like, I don't even care if Team USA loses to Canada. Can they at least just lose in the gold medal game? So that's when I scheduled them to lose, so I can, write on my content then and not have to, panic at 1 a.m. in the morning and be like, oh God, am I going to have to write something when I can't? I need to go to bed. So by this time next week, I'll be playing the sequel to one of my favorite video games. And I'm just really excited. There's a lot more out there than arguing about stuff online. I don't get being a contrarian, or I don't get holding that much hatred even still. There's just so much going on, Andrew. The world has so much to see and so much to do. So that's all I got. That's
Star Wars isn't even like the most interesting franchise out there.
No.
It's like a solid fourth.
I enjoy Star Wars. I do. I have a lot of good memories of it, but there's so much really awesome media out there that you should, dive into. If Star Wars is disappointing you, go look elsewhere. There's so much good media out there, mainstream and not, that you should, check out and enjoy, because there's so much good content out there that there ever has been, I think, before ever in our lifetimes. So find something you enjoy and embrace that, instead of watching something you hate and turning into the worst person in the world.
Yes. All right. I got to end it there because I got to sleep. So thanks for listening to the Cross-Check NHL show. If you want to continue listening to stuff, make your second listen Locked On Bets. Your boy Q and the handicapping expert Lee Sterling bring you the best bets across all sports every day on the Locked On Podcast Network, wherever you can get your podcasts. And thanks for listening to us, and we'll see you every Tuesday and Friday. Later.